Carabao Cup time, and I'm pleased to be joined by Neil from the Anfield Wrap to get his view on all things Liverpool, West Ham, and how he sees the game going on Wednesday night. Neil, let's just start with a very vague question. How's your season going so far? Because from the outside looking in, looks like it's going pretty good.
It has gone pretty good, yeah. The new manager's come in, and the best thing about it's been he's not looked very hard in places. He's not talked about transition. He's not said it's going to be difficult to succeed Jurgen Klopp. What he's done instead is he's basically got the attitude of, I'm here to win. And he set the standards in a really good, high way, up to and including when they got beat by Nottingham Forest. You know, one of the things he said after they won against AC Milan is he supposedly walked into the dressing room and said, well, it's even more of a disgrace now that you lost that game against Forest, rather than the idea of, well done, boys, you bounced back well. It's good. I was worried, not in terms of whether or not he was a good manager. You could see there was a pedigree there, but whether or not there was how you address the idea of succeeding Klopp, because he is such a unique personality in a number of ways. And the way he's addressed it is by, I think, is he's turned up to win. There is no other, there's no other way to get around it. There's nothing else to be said about it. He's turned up to win. And I think that's exactly what we needed. And I think that so far, it will be difficult. Obviously, they beat Nottingham Forest. That's how it's not difficult to imagine that'd be going any better. They beat Nottingham Forest. It's going better. But that aside, I think every single aspect of it has gone about as well as could be hoped.
I was going to say, what's your thoughts on your manager so far? You sound very impressed. I'm a bit jealous, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought that you'd made a really shrewd appointment, and it shows how difficult that can be. What it is that when you're coming in to do things a little bit differently. I am very impressed. I'm impressed with he's won over big players, big personalities early. Everyone at the club has spoken really positively about him, and I think it's because his mindset and the attitude is he's not here to waste anyone's time. The easiest thing to have done would have been to say transition. It'll take me 12 months, sort this out, sort that out, and he's not done that at all, not for a second. And so I think that him sort of evoking that thing is, I think it's really galvanised the players as well. And I think last season was a transitional year for Liverpool, much more than it was almost given credit for at the time. I mean, I don't know if you even get transitional years in football anymore, or even if you ever really did. But last season, Liverpool bought 4 midfielders. I'd suffered a poor season the season before and needed to embed, not necessarily even a new way of playing, but they needed to markedly improve quickly. And they did that. And now I think that Slot's come in and he's not throwing everything out. He has a different way of playing and a different way of going about things. But he still takes a lot of what Jurgen's sides did very well, and he's added part of what he wants in there as well, which is a bit more control, which is also what Jurgen himself, I think, would have done if he'd have stayed. It's worth pointing out, Liverpool in 2018-19 and 21-22 concede the joint lowest goals in the league in the season 21-22, I think, and the lowest in 18-19. They only concede something like 22 in 38 games. So the idea that Klopp couldn't coach or didn't coach a side that could defend or sides that could control games was nonsense. But what the pattern had been was, it would be something that would be locked in when the side was ready to take the step to the very highest level. And it feels like that's what Slot's come in and offered and done, is that idea of, right, we've got this stuff up front and it's working really, really well. And we can be aggressive and we can win the ball back high and we can turn sides over, but we just need to lock this back part now and take more control of games. And that's what's happened. And that's been the improvement so far. I don't think they've played a really good side yet. I don't think Manchester United are a really good side at the moment, and I think that needs to be acknowledged. So we still need to see what it looks like when they go away from home to a really good side. I think Bournemouth are a good team. They were good against us on Saturday, and we eased to a 3-0 win. But, we'll see what it is. After the next international break, we've got games coming against Chelsea and Arsenal. We've got Leipzig in Europe and Leverkusen in Europe. So we'll see a bit more then and learn a bit more then. But for now, it's just a matter of getting the points on the board and getting the job done.
Yeah, I was wondering what the big difference between Slot and Klopp was, because, Jamie Carragher, after that game against Man United, was alluding to the fact that it was more just Liverpool were a bit more patient, had a bit more control, and they were maybe a little bit more Man City-esque in a way. It's like, right, we've got the goal now, let's just keep the ball. And Carragher sort of asked Slot that, and Slot suggested, basically said, no, because Klopp did that as well a little bit. And I found myself agreeing with both. I found myself agreeing with Carragher. Well, actually, this did feel like a different Liverpool, but I also found myself agreeing with Slot, which actually didn't feel like that much of a different Liverpool. And it very much does feel like he's just building on what Klopp's done rather than rip up the blueprint and try and change it and make it his way. So is it fair to say that the biggest difference is almost not even a mentality thing, because it's hardly like Klopp was not a winner. So
yeah, I think the difficulty is it's different from last season's Liverpool.
Yeah.
So it's last season's Liverpool. Klopp very much went back to his first principles of we go with intensity, we go with dynamism. Wherever possible, every pass is a forward pass. And that's what he did last season, Jurgen. And in lots of ways, it was almost like Jurgen turbocharged his football. I think that was the decision made in part of how bad 2022-23 was, when, you know, I think he felt over the course of that season, he moved away from a lot of his core football and principles. But again, you know, in the same way that 17-18, what Liverpool do in 2017-2018, that season, is almost like that turbocharged, super attacking Klopp football, scores 4 against Manchester City at Anfield, puts 5 against past them in Europe over 2 legs, you know, does all of that, gets to the Champions League final, and it doesn't quite come off that night against Real Madrid, but does that in part by scoring 5 in 70 minutes against Roma in the semi-final.
West Ham aren't doing too great right now, but that does not mean you do not deserve a top-performing team in your life, and that's where Manscaped comes in. At the moment, Michail Antonio's ball control is a little bit rough, but that doesn't mean your ball control should be rough. In fact, it should be smooth, and that's where the Lawnmower 5 comes in. We've got a little bit of a treat for you, a little something to cheer you up as West Ham are not performing too great. We're going to give you the best performers in the game when it comes to male grooming, and we're giving you 20% off everything on their website, including their already discounted bundle deals. Their top performing package has the Lawnmower 5, which is their main tool that takes care of every hair on your body. So whether you're trimming or shaving completely, the Lawnmower 5 does that job, and it comes with its interchangeable heads, allowing you to control the length of the growth that you are cutting. It also has a weed whacker, which I've ordered myself, and it's en route. I'm looking forward to getting it. Can't tell if it's a sign of me getting old or sad that I'm looking forward to a tool that will trim the hair of my nose and ear. I need it. I'm getting old. I don't like it. I've accepted it. I've bit the bullet. It's en route. But you get the weed whacker in the performance bundle. You also get deodorant and lotion for your ball sack to keep it looking healthy and smelling good. You also get free boxers as well as a free toiletry bag as well. So that bundle deal is £210. It's discounted to £130 by Manscaped. We've used the code HammersChatPubes, all one word. Gives you 20% off everything, including that bundle deal. So obviously you'll save 26 quid. So down to £104. So £210 down to £104, and you get everything that you need for male grooming. It helps you feel like a Premier League groundsman, and it's easier now. It's easier to be the groundsman of your body than it is to be the groundsman of AFC Wimbledon. What a mess that place is, but it doesn't mean your ball sack should be a mess.
Then what happened next was Klopp's side then evolved itself into a next step. So Klopp's sides were going to go through that evolution process. I think that's why last season, I think that it is different to last season's Liverpool in terms of how it wants more control, more patience, more of a desire to get games won, more of a desire to keep the back door shut. But, you know, I always remember there was a game just before the pandemic lockdown in 2019-20 where Bournemouth came to Anfield. It was in my head because of the run-up to this Bournemouth game. And we're 2-1 up. And on about 55 minutes, Bournemouth get through. And the lad dinks the keeper. And James Milner, playing left-back that day, breaks his back to keep it, to basically stop it from going over the line. It's a brilliant goal line clearance. And then Bournemouth didn't have another shot because Liverpool just went, nah. No, we're not risking this, you know. And at that point, Liverpool was so many points ahead. But it was that side was able to say, you got in there. For the next 35 minutes, you're not getting anywhere near our goal. And that was, you know, that was a Klopp side. So it was never as though Klopp sides in general weren't capable of doing that. But it's worth saying that there were different Klopp sides. And last season was, you know, Jurgen himself said at one point, this is Liverpool 2.0. It was the idea he'd reset, but I think he'd reset back to 2017. Now Slot's coming in and he's doing the year after. And in the year after, Liverpool get 97 points, concede 22 goals, as I think I said before. And I think that's now Slot's responsibility to try and do something similar to that. So it is, Slot's right and Carragher is right. You know what I mean? I think Carragher is thinking about the last 18 months of Jurgen, but Slot's looking at it as a whole and saying, no, this is this is what he was capable of, but I've just got to do the next thing.
Excellent. Right then, before we change the conversation, still on Liverpool, we're going to change it slightly. I just want to point you, the viewer, in direction of Neil. He has a book coming out this week on Jurgen Klopp. So if you're a Liverpool fan, you fancy getting your hands on it, or if you're a West Ham fan, you just fancy reading about another team, the link to get that book will be in the description below, as well as the Anfield Wrap and Neil's social media profiles. So get involved. Links there. What's your aims for the season then? With all this said and done, and I'm aware they may have changed compared to the start of the season. We're quite early, but I think there's been a lot of positivity. So what's your hopes and aims?
Title challenge, go deep in Europe. It's not, I think that ultimately, and West Ham fans know this, actually, I think I mentioned West Ham in the book. I mentioned the way they go about the Conference League and how impressive that was. I've always cited one of my favourite goals I've ever seen in football was Bowen's in the final. I watched it out and I was in a Liverpool bar and there was students and people who were back in West Ham, and it was great when it went in. I would say, and West Ham now have got experience of this, recent experience of this, any season that feels like a live going proposition in April is a good season. I've seen enough, even being lucky enough to support Liverpool, I've seen enough Liverpool seasons where you feel like you've got very little to hope for by March. And I'm always happy to qualify for the Champions League. I think it's important Liverpool do that, but that's not the same as having something which you feel as though you can win in April. And that's what I want this year. I think Liverpool being live in Europe in April, and Liverpool still having a genuine interest in the league title in April, which they did last April. It's worth saying it was in April where it began to go pear-shaped for us. But that means that if Liverpool are in a situation this year where they could win the league in April, it means we've had a lovely August through to March. And that's important. So, yeah, I think Liverpool can win the league. I think they'll need a bit of luck to do it. I think that Manchester City look imperious and Arsenal look really, really strong. But that's all right. That you need a bit of luck to win things. And in Europe, it was an excellent win against Milan in the week. It becomes a cup competition, the other side of the Swiss system. And again, a cup competition, you always need a bit of luck. So it's always worth sort of caveat and everything you say with that. But I think Liverpool, by the end of this season, when Slot's actually had longer to work with them, there's a chance that Liverpool will look like one of the best 8 teams in Europe. And if you're in that position, then you've got Dortmund made the final last year. If you're in that position, then you've got a really good chance of pulling something out the bag. So yeah, it's what it always is, really, a genuine interest in winning at least one of the big 2. And then we'll see from there when we get into the business end.
I want to just now jump ahead to beyond this season in regard to contract situations for Van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Mo Salah. How are you feeling about those? Because it feels like, if all 3 of them re-sign, brilliant, but there is a small possibility that all 3 leave, but maybe more likely that at least one of them will perhaps go.
Yeah, I think one of the oddnesses is that they're sort of grouped together, but the 3 genuinely quite different situations. Yeah. You've got where Salah is at the moment, where he started the season prior to the first international break, looked absolutely brilliant. Last 2 league games, he's actually not played particularly well. He's got a lot of the ball around the penalty area. But I think in general, there is a feeling he remains a special and powerful player. However, all of that said, Liverpool will at some point have to have a life without Mo Salah. So I think that there is, he is also currently Liverpool's highest earner. And part of where the other 2 contract situations sit is that there is something in relation to that. Does Trent Alexander-Arnold feel as though he should be closer to parity with Mo Salah? If that is true, then where does Mo Salah's contract go? I sort of struggle to see how Liverpool put Mo Salah on more money at this stage of his career with his output and how he'll need to be managed. But does he go on the same money? And is there a negotiation to be had there? And also, what does Salah want? I don't think Salah does want to go into semi-retirement. I think he still feels as though he can contribute in terms of winning the biggest trophies in the game. And he loves Liverpool. This is the other Salah thing. He absolutely loves Liverpool, loves playing for Liverpool. So I think that Salah, Salah could, I think if Liverpool were to give, then Salah could get done relatively quickly. But it may well be that Liverpool are choosing to assess the situation maybe a bit more than we think. The other end of that spectrum is Trent Alexander-Arnold, I think, where I'd understand if Trent had felt he wanted a break from English football in a number of ways, given the unbelievable scrutiny he's continually under and everything he's won in the game. But the flip side is he's playing for his boyhood club, and therefore you'd like to think that would count for something in the reckoning. Maybe it won't, but you sort of feel as though it will. And he's a unique footballer. But one of the problems with unique footballers is, yeah, they're unique, but that actually at times gives you tactical questions to answer a little bit. He is the only right back on the planet who can play right back the way he does. The flip side of that, though, is, but other teams are winning games without someone like that at right back. Other teams are winning trophies without someone like that at right back. So you don't need that player. It's not, it's brilliant. He is incredible. He was brilliant yesterday, I thought, against Bournemouth. So I love him to pieces, but that's a different thing to, to anything else. And then in the middle of this is sort of Van Dijk, who's club captain. I think Trent would like to be club captain. So what's going to happen with Virgil? How's that going to go? What's the journey of that in there? But also with Van Dijk, he's the oldest of the three by a little bit over Salah and substantially over Trent. And you have this thing where there's just a little bit of the worry with centre-backs, having seen it in the past, and I'm sure there'll be West Ham equivalents, is almost more than any other position. Centre-backs can just go in 2 months. They can go from looking like we're, completely imperious, capable of anything, to 2 months later, you're looking at them going, God. Now, I don't think Van Dijk's going anywhere for 2 years. And again, he's been excellent so far this season as well. Genuinely so good, and is just different class. But what Liverpool would not want is to suddenly be lumbered with Van Dijk on a 3-year deal. If 18 months in, you're thinking, when are we going to play him? Yeah. Because it's got so they are quite different. I think Salah wouldn't hang around if it wasn't going well, but I think Virgil, because of his sort of cultural and leadership based importance, there would be that feeling that you'd still think he's got a bit more to give. But then the flip side of that is I think Thiago Silva, pretty much until his last 3 months at Chelsea, recently acquitted himself brilliantly, and that's the sort of class Van Dijk's in. I think it's difficult. I do think all three will sign, and that's not just some sort of mindless optimism. It's more that in the cold analysis, Liverpool are in a number of ways just about likely to be. The one way they're not going to be possibly, but is financially. But in all the other ways, I think the Salah and Virgil's best offer. And then I think for Trent, I think it would be such a move for him to choose to leave Liverpool without there being a fee. Having grown up around here, I think that's the sort of thing that begins to undermine what gets called legacies. And I don't think he wants to do that. But I think that Liverpool will look to sort of push the point and push the deal.
Excellent. Well, love that. Right, from your team to my team, what do you make of West Ham then?
Weird. I found it really odd watching you so far this season. I've seen I caught the game against Villa, so I saw that one. I had a little look yesterday, obviously, with the game against Chelsea. I thought there was the oddness of the Manchester City game where I thought you were actually playing quite well, and then you just got Haalanded. I thought that you were hanging in there in quite an interesting way. But the minute he goes 2-1, it just seemed to me as though the air just came out the balloon. It went from looking like West Ham had a really smart way to counter to suddenly it was like, oh God, this is going to be such a long afternoon in our own grounds, and what do we do from this? In that, it was a funny one really, where the numbers don't really suggest at the point where Haaland makes it 2. They don't really suggest West Ham were in the game, but actually West Ham were really in the game. But it just then looked so hard, and then City finished that half so strongly, buoyed by it. I thought West Ham got themselves together second half there, but ultimately it always looked like City were going to ensure that they had another gear, and then he goes on and gets the hat-trick. I think the thing I would sort of say in defence of the new manager is he's had 3 home games, and I think he's run into 3 sides that are going to finish top 6. 2 of them are playing Champions League football. One's the reigning league champions, and I think Chelsea are better than because of the madness of Chelsea. I understand why the popular imagination has a sense of where Chelsea are, but I actually just think that last season I thought Chelsea were better than people were giving them credit for. And it doesn't take much for them to improve, not least because there's a lot of players there who are another year older. So it's a really good win in that context, I think, against Southampton. And then it almost just becomes, this idea of, I think it's so dependent on what happens next. I think it's a big away game for him next week at Brentford. I think he needs to not lose at the very least, because if not, everyone's just going to start to look a bit over the shoulder, look at the money spent, look at the excellence there is in wide areas. I think it's hard. I think, as I say, I think he's had hard lines, and I'm always sympathetic with any manager really who, against a side who at least on paper are a bigger budgeted team, if you're conceding 2 goals before 20 minutes, you can say, has he not set them up right? Has he not done this? Has he not done that? But there's times where players are just responsible. So I think that West Ham will have a good season. I actually think they should be going hell for leather in this game on Wednesday. That's not to say he shouldn't make any changes, but the changes he should make should be for the players who want to impress, who feel as though there's a space there to grab. But also, last season at this stage or the round after, you beat Arsenal. And I think this is a good year for someone who isn't one of the more established European clubs to win a domestic cup because of the additional games in European competition for everyone and the timing of when everything falls. So I think that Wednesday is a good opportunity to get the season on track. I think it'll be a good game on Wednesday, and I think Liverpool will make 10 changes. So this is a good chance for West Ham to come to Anfield and get something.
Yeah, I mean, I think optimism is quite low among the fan base at the minute, given how we've played, as well as our results, but also how we've played. I think everybody's feeling Liverpool. I think the reaction when the draw was made was, "Oh, leave it out. I'll wait till Liverpool in the next round." You're having a laugh, and then we've seen you get beat by Nottingham Forest, so it almost gave us hope. Yeah. And it was like, "Oh, hello," they're not unbeatable then. And then the weekend just gone. You've swatted Bournemouth aside, but at the same time, we've been just getting run through by Chelsea. So I think the optimism's dived down a little bit. In regards to Wednesday, then, how do you see this game going?
I think there's a chance we look really disjointed. As I say, I think he's literally going to change every outfield player. I think that there's some who need a game. There's some who, played well. I've played well when they've been given opportunities. So Shimikas and Gakpo both did, Gakpo especially did really well in Milan. And I think both of them come back in from, they didn't play the weekend's game. So there's 2 changes, but they've got a bit of rhythm. But I think both centre-halves will drop out, and they've been really good so far this season. So it'll be Quansah and Gomez as suspected centre-back. Bradley's a great talent. He'll play right back. But, he's been getting time on the pitch, but he's not got that many games. And the goalkeeper will stay in. He won't bring Alisson back or play Yaros. I think it'll just be Kelleher again. And then I think in midfield, sort of moving forward, this is where it could look particularly disjointed. He's not really had any truck with Wataru Endo, even during pre-season. But I think he sort of has to pick him. So I think he picks him. I think he picks a young lad called Tyler Morton, who did well in the Championship on loan last season. I think he needs to give them both a game and have a look at them. And then I think he picks Curtis Jones, who came on over the weekend, was good. And then I said before, Gakpo one side. I think Jota comes back in, which is good for us. And I think Chiesa gets his full debut. So there's obviously a lot of attacking talent there, especially if you include Jones and you include Bradley, and Shimikas's set pieces are excellent. So I think it's not to say that Liverpool are not playing, 11 dopes. They're playing 11 really good players, but they're playing players who have not played together. And when so much of what you do is about being cohesive with the ball and controlled with the ball and people knowing each other's movements, which is how we play, I think there's a chance, at least for half an hour, Liverpool look a bit scrappy at Anfield on Wednesday. So I've seen that before. You can think it's sort of a pulled together team, and suddenly they can just be finding it difficult. If it was away, I think we were getting beat. I'll be honest. I'd think that we were going to lose the game if it was away. But that's fine. I think it's interesting. The funny thing about the League Cup, if you're lucky enough to be us, is that you either want to win it or you want to go out third round. There's no, you either want the very least you want the day at Wembley, or you want to go out third round, because you don't want to be going out in the 2-legged semis when you've just added that to your schedule. The idea that this manager gets a week between some games in October and November would be brilliant. He's not going to get that otherwise all the way through until Christmas. So you are ending up in this position where we are the holders. And we've had a lot of fun winning the last 2 times we've won this. Genuinely, it's been brilliant. It was one, so this isn't some sort of, being unbelievably spoiled thing. The final last year was one of my favourite moments ever supporting Liverpool. I'd love to win it again. I'd love to retain it. I think it'd be amazing. It would also be a first trophy for Slot if that was to happen. But the flip side genuinely is, if we're not going to win it, then there's a bit of me that's like, it's all right to go out in the third round. And the toughest opponents, I think, are the best sides that aren't playing European football, because they've got good squads, genuine depth, loads of quality, well managed, but they're not playing European football. So I think that, as I say, if this was away where you knocked Arsenal out last season, and Arsenal played a pretty strong Arsenal side in the end in that one, and certainly made really attacking subs to try to save the game, but West Ham were too good on the day. And I'd fancy that could happen if this was away. Obviously, a lot likelier. As it is, I think we will probably find a way to scrape through. But I'm expecting it to be a really good game. I think that the sort of players that you're going to see Lopetegui be able to introduce who he's not been in a position to sort of introduce properly yet or play that much. I think will be really interesting. I think it's an opportunity for Somerville to get some more time on the pitch for him. I think there's another 2 or 3 in the attacking areas who'll get the chance to play who maybe haven't had that yet. So yeah, I think it'll be a good game, but I think we'll just scrape it.
Well, then, can I get a score prediction from you, please?
2-1 Liverpool.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much for tuning in, Neil. Thank you as always, an absolute pleasure. If you guys would like to hear and see more from Neil, you can head over to the Anfield Wrap. Like I said, he's got a book out this week, so if you fancy purchasing an old school book and reading up on Neil's thoughts regarding Jurgen Klopp and looking for that mention of the Conference League final, links in the description below. If you've enjoyed the video, please do drop a like, comment, subscribe, your time to chat. Neil, thank you so much and good luck with your book launch.
Thank you.